really think you have a chance against us, Mr. Cowboy?
Hey, motherfucker, what you like to do?
Oh, I don't know. Play chess. Screw.
Well, let's play chess.
They give off to Jonathan Taylor. Jump cutting his way close to the goal line. He's in there. Touchdown. I-N-D-Y. Jonathan Taylor.
Wheeler finds Quan from the logo.
Here's Halliburton into the front court. Mishandled it, but gets a shot. Hits it. Hits it.
John, I have never been better to be on the air with you here in Indianapolis, a place where so many of my dreams have come true.
The Ride with JMV on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
We're prepped for jacket-off weather today, so we'll try to keep you updated. Again, we don't have any windows here, but we do have eyes and we have ears throughout the building, and then you as well, to let us know if anything transpires. Because, you know, the first things first, I want to make sure that you guys out there are aware. Because I love you. And we want you here every day. We want you tomorrow at Coach's Tavern. I want to be able to see you, be able to hang out, be able to have cocktails, right? So we will remain vigilant and weather aware, even though we are in a room with no windows, as much as we can over the course of the afternoon. I know. See, it's different, though. The whole jacket-off weather theme normally is built around weather happening outside the normal broadcast window for our weather folks. However, this is going to be a little bit different. This is probably going to be, for the most part, inside the weather window. I'm going to say this. If Chris Wright comes rolling out there later on today at about 4:30, with no suit coat on, then we're all hosed. Let's not be hosed today. Purdue, you are not hosed. Basketball universe, you are not hosed. IU fans, chill until you see the finished product on the floor. Hey, remember a year ago, it was this guy's the best out of the transfer portal, that guy's the best out of the transfer portal, and that equated to what you witnessed over the course of this season. Do you want to go through that again? Are you not used to that now? So wait until, seriously, I like to use the term because it's so old, it reminds me of Little House on the Prairie. Cobbled. Darren DeVries is cobbling together a roster right now. Connor Enright, the guard out of DePaul, the guard that high school-wise I think was at a couple of different ones, but came out of the state of Illinois, is a part of that IU basketball program via the transfer portal. I'm a big fan of Chris Holtmann. And he played at DePaul for Chris Holtmann this past year. Chris Holtmann's trying to restore the glory once seen with Joey Meyer, the son of Ray Meyer, if you can remember. Certainly Ray Meyer in that era was a big damn deal right there. Connor Enright. But that doesn't restore the glory, but it's about putting together a puzzle. I know that it sounds lame, and I know nobody out there puts together puzzles anymore, but it is true. Last year, remember how excited everybody was? You're getting this guy and that guy. This guy's a big-time player. Miles Rice, point guard. Carlisle, guy coming from Stanford. He can score and he can shoot it. And then we found out he couldn't shoot it a lick. That's bad. Hey, he can shoot it. You got a shooter coming in here. Get this shooter. And then you find out that they can't shoot it to save their life. Ballo, arguably the best player in the portal, who gave you moments, but collectively these guys gave you absolutely nothing. So just see what they end up putting together. Meantime, if you're in West Lafayette, I would crap my pants if I were you if Smith or Lawyer or Kaufman-Wren ended up in the transfer portal. And as much as I loved, and I documented this over the weekend, man, part of the reason why I was bummed that the Boilermakers were done, got a faulty whistle, but also Messed up that final inbounds play. We know that defensively. Got outfoxed, or however you want to put it. However you want to shape it. One of the reasons why, or a couple of the reasons why in this case, I was bummed is because I liked watching both of these guys evolve. I liked watching them. And I thought, man, what is going to be next with Miles Colvin? Well, you're not going to find out in West Lafayette because he, a couple of days ago, went into the transfer portal. I really wanted to know what was next with this program with Cam Heide, both of which showed you that they were late in the season against a really good team, for example, stepping up. And then Cam Heide decides to, earlier today, as it's reported, to go into the transfer portal. So I think, what's his name, Nico Medved, who just took over at Minnesota. That's where Heide is from. I'm just connecting dots here. I don't have any inner wisdom whatsoever. But he's from Minnesota. New coach at Minnesota, new coach that had Ethan Morton a year ago in Fort Collins for Colorado State. I mean, hell, you could connect the dots on this if you want. Here's a lot of money. You can also look at, all right, so we're going to make sure that we keep the guys, the so-called big three right here. Smith, Kaufman, Wren, and Lawyer. So here's our money, and here's your money to make sure you guys hang around. And then everybody else, we're going to have to fill in the gaps. We see that Burgess is back. You know that Jack Benner from Brownstown Central is going to be active and be up there next year. And then, as Matt Painter talked about last week, he was going to go deeply into the transfer portal. And if you remember, the last thing that I asked him about, do you know what your roster is going to look like next year? And he just said no. And then there was a pause. And I wanted to jump in, but I held myself back because, dead air is a bad thing on radio. I wanted to jump in. So we had what they call a pregnant pause of about 3 seconds. And then he said, how can you? We can't. We have no idea. And then you have those end-of-season meetings. You lay things out. And while we know this to be true, and what Danny Hurley said on 60 Minutes about 3 weeks ago was accurate, these guys are getting recruited year-round by everybody. Everybody. And it's tough for me to sit here on my big ass at 55 and suggest that I would love to think myself as loyal. I have a great deal of loyalty. I would love to be loyal, but if I'm 19, 20, 21, 22, Hunter Dickinson, 29, if I'm of that age and you offer me a lot more money, hell, I'm on board. Especially considering how worthless I was at Indiana State. So yeah. How much money you got for me, Eastern Illinois? I'm coming over there. Charleston, right? We used to go over there and get beer before we were 21. No, not really. Maybe. But yeah, I would have done more than likely the same thing. I would hope that maybe loyalty would set in, and certainly loyalty and continuity. And early, we'll see how it turns out late. But, man, early continuity is so important for how you get started. And some teams, like, for example, IU never found a consistent level of continuity with players that were incredibly talented. I mean, really, where they found that continuity with three dudes that you would go, well, wait a minute. How much you paying these guys again? Why? From Goody, who wants to be back. Yeah, that's another reason why. I mean, you want to be back. Also, you understand you want to be paid. I mean, look at the women's game right now. You're getting paid more handsomely as a top-notch player in the women's game collegiately through NIL than you are in the WNBA. And one of these days, they're going to have to figure that out. I'm assuming the whole Caitlin Clark era, which is now explosive, will help that out a great deal. And I think that's what a lot of players that are disgruntled and get pissy and get mad about how much spotlight is going on Caitlin Clark. I'm telling you, if I were in that league, I would say I would want the spotlight, yet let it grow. What do they say in radio, James? What are all these consulting nerds that don't know jack squat about what we do but act like they do and make decisions that are stupid? What do they say? Let it grow organically. No bigger nerds in the world to tell me how something needs to grow organically. Is that what they tell you? Consultants? Who are our consultants?
I don't talk to consultants.
You
That's
know?
all on your end.
You don't talk to consultants?
Not really.
You're a producer. How do you not talk to consultants?
See, they just talk to Todd, and then Todd talks to me.
It's funny, man. For the JMV takeover, like Copeland, this is a great story. Copeland said, hey, everybody, the show's great and it's going great on Saturday. He goes, but it's weird because I get all these reports on what we play, and in the 11 o'clock hour, it seems like people are telling me, I get in these reports from these consultants how big the catalog has become with 70s music. And well, that's a staple of the show right there in the 11 o'clock hour. Again, it goes to show you, and if you listen to the show, and I apologize because I know a lot of that age demographic because I'm approaching that too. You go to MCL on Saturday night and you're in bed by 6. So me making you hold on and not go to bed with super sounds of the 70s after 11 sounds mean-spirited, but it isn't, because it's a way to show everybody how we work, what works, what is interesting to you. It's not all about the same demographic. I just actually had this conversation in one of the studios a little bit earlier. I said, what you got to do in radio, around here we're fortunate because we give you content that nobody else is, and I explain this all the time. We talk about things that nobody else gives one fat crap of what you care about around here. Not one. Seriously, nobody's talking about IU. Nobody cares about Purdue. Nobody cares about the NIT around here. Nobody cares about the Colts. If Andrew Luck retires 30 seconds before the start of the regular season, then yeah, nationally everybody's going to be in on that, but otherwise nobody cares. Nobody cares about your quarterback competition. Nobody cares about what you need at tight end, who you're going to draft at tight end. And that's why you're fortunate, because we do. And for 9 hours a day, from the morning show with Jeff and James and Kevin to Jake and Eddie with Cray and Company to us, I mean, we care about what you care about. And that's what makes it so significant. And I will always say this, and again, I'm in it, so I've got to embrace it and love it, and I always will. But we care about what you care about. And that's what matters to us. And you're not going to get that anyplace else. So when you hear that from somebody that is completely detached from the situation, I just kind of giggle and laugh. And that's basically what, you get this in television too and any other aspect of life. That's what a consultant does. And consultant's not good enough to do it the way that you do it, but they have been elevated to authority to tell you how to do it, and really they don't know how to do it. So just let me dictate the terms on this. And I'll help you. We've been doing it for 20-plus years. So I think we have a pretty good idea about what you want, how you want to hang, how we want to help those, our partners. So it makes a great deal of sense. And it was funny when Sean brought that up. I thought, yeah, well, you don't listen. You don't listen to what happens in the 11 o'clock hour when evidently somebody takes, a Saturday night nap and wakes back up after MCL and wants to hear Chic, which is all good with me. And that's Super Sounds of the 70s after 11. And that's what we do in Hard Target for you, all these stories where nobody else cares about it. Think anybody nationally really cares about Connor Enright? Not really. We do. We do for you because we know you do. Or that Cam Heide feels like he could probably get more cash, more opportunity someplace else, maybe back in his home state. Miles Colvin, who is from Heritage Christian, whose father is an incredible, highly talented, good dude, by the way, to really good dude is Roosevelt Colvin. Former NFL player, Purdue product, going someplace else, that's what you care about. That's what matters right here. That's why we discuss it. And don't even get me started on the Pacers because nobody, I mentioned this yesterday with Candace Parker on Monday night, had mentioned the Pacers for like 3 minutes, and you thought the seas were parted go, wait a minute, like some really incredible background music is playing. Whoa, somebody nationally is talking about the Pacers as a team to watch. Now, granted, to me, they're going to be more of a team to watch if they become more consistent. And while you think tonight with Charlotte is, hey, this is a really crappy team and the Pacers are at home. So the Pacers try to keep from being swept by this crappy team. There has been no larger pain in the ass across the NBA landscape than this so-called crappy team. And you know what's funny about it? No matter the personnel, it doesn't matter. No matter the personnel. So what I want to witness later on tonight, what I want to see against Utah on Friday night, and what I want to see for the remainder of the regular season is a team more consistent from start to finish. And believe me, all that matters is, this is easy to say, and there's so much truth to it. All that matters is what? That you win. But I'm not giving away style points. The consistency is for when you play teams that are at a much higher level. And that's coming. That is on the horizon. You're officially now a part again of the postseason as of last night. That's coming. And you have to be able to match that. This is not trying to match a fourth quarter with dudes that probably would be playing in the G League if the team that you're up against was any good whatsoever. But there's still a way to prove that. And the way you prove that is start the way that you finish. Try to maintain the level of consistency. That's how you do it. I'm not suggesting you do it just to prove it to us, to me, to you, the fan, or whatever. But this is the confidence that is built. Rick Carlisle said on the morning show with Kevin on Tuesday that he felt that Pascal Siakam was tired and needed a rest. Okay, well, give him a rest then. And the best way to give him a rest is to get up 25 or 30 and to cruise home and to let him sit on the bench and rest. Now, otherwise, I would also tell you this. As somebody that loves basketball, there is no bigger energy shot than watching your jumper go in. Watching your jumper be true. Success. All right? I will tell you this. More than just a really nice nap. 2 or 3 jump shots made in a row. That's where I would think you would find your energy. Now, people would suggest, all right, well, this is a different level, and you're absolutely right. And maybe he does need rest. He's been going through a lot. He had that personal time, that one game he was away. Maybe there's some other stuff going on. We never know this. But the one thing that has been true in all of sports, and in this case in basketball, when you see success right in front of you, you feel good. And that's one hell of an elixir right there. And feeling good after making jumpers and seeing that thing go down, that's none of the banned list. Or that doesn't require you being on the injured list. So to me, especially if you're at that level of pro, maybe a fourth quarter breather would be great. But seeing your jumper be true again and consistent again and being that threat that made you into an all-star this season again, to me, that is going to be the most important. And I don't give a damn if you're playing one of the worst teams in the NBA. To the Pacers, this has been one of the larger pains in the ass. Dispose accordingly. Later on tonight, 7 o'clock is that tip time. 6:30 coverage begins right here. Pat Boylan will run the show for the pregame show. Pat's going to join us at the bottom of the hour. Pat's also the voice of the Indiana Fever, and we'll sneak a couple of questions in regarding the Fever coming up with Pat, I should say, at the bottom of the hour. Kevin Bowen, 4 o'clock hour. It's funny. I watched the NIT last night, and I was entertained. UC Irvine, Chattanooga, that is your matchup for the championship. I know we're at least going to have one coach Russell Turner's going to join us, and I'm going to give you a common bond in my first question to Russell when he joins us coming up at the bottom of the 4 o'clock hour. Again, NIT going on over at Hinkle Fieldhouse. Great venue. I still enjoyed the basketball last night. Chattanooga has a great backcourt, no doubt about that. But the one thing that is common, I think, to what I've talked about and the experience of a year ago with Indiana State is UC Irvine. So they lost, did not win the Big West title. Certainly good enough to be a part on the fringe of going in to the tournament, but on the outside looking in. So after that massive disappointment in not winning your conference championship, you're not a part of the dialogue on Selection Sunday. And then 3 days later, you have to pick your ass up and go play in an NIT where in large part you're probably thinking, this sucks, why am I here? That's exactly the scenario for Indiana State a year ago. And then we saw, I think it was SMU was their first game, and it was in Terre Haute at the Holman Center. And it was a slog until about midway through the second half, and then the Sycamores picked it up and won. There is a common theme right there, and Russell Turner, the head coach of the Anteaters, by the way, which is one of the greater mascots out there. Do you think they actually have anteaters at UC Irvine?
Probably not.
You think so?
I would assume they don't have a live anteater that they trot out there.
So are anteaters, are they just native to Africa, or are they everywhere? Do we know?
I have no idea.
I have no idea. Can you do your anteater research, please?
I didn't realize I had to be an expert on anteaters.
I'm a
coming in
consultant
today.
right now, and your producer has not done your anteater research. Voice of the Final Four, Iron Eagles in the 5 o'clock hour as well. Is Danny Earl going to join us, the Chattanooga coach? Maybe?
Potentially. I have not heard back on that one.
How are our phones doing right now?
Well, apparently the hotline works.
Really?
And that's about the only thing that works.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So, yeah. It appears that our phones are a bit on life support right here.
Yeah, they're having some issues.
So we shall see. I've got to give away tickets. Once upon a time, we didn't have phones, and I sent Tony downstairs, and he handed a pair of tickets to somebody on the circle.
Mm-hmm.
We can't do that anymore because we don't physically have the tickets. They're
all
emailed.
electronic.
So how do you think we do that? We do that via social media?
Could do that.
Mm.
By the way, it says here, anteaters, Central America and South America.
No, not even Africa. Hell,
Apparently
I don't even have the right continent. I'm no Marlon Perkins on this show. Not even the right continent. So native to Central America and South America.
According to Wikipedia.
Is all they eat, that's all they eat, ants? That's it?
I'm assuming that's all they eat.
Wow. All right, well, I'll tell you what, he has been there for the better part of almost now 2 decades. All right, we'll talk to Russell Turner, the head coach of the Anteaters of UC Irvine in the 4 o'clock hour. And really, if for nothing else, I want to talk about the mid-major situation in all this, because while everybody else at the big-time program level is restocking, yeah, good luck for the mid-major. They are losing and losing at a rapid pace. Now, Russell Turner in the 4 o'clock hour. Quick break. We'll come back with you. Some form or fashion, we're going to give away tickets to see the Flaming Lips and Modest Mouse at Everwise Amphitheater. And this show is going to be live on the road coming up tomorrow. Coach's Tavern downtown. Heaven Hill Distillery. Me, Brent Holverson. It is going to be a blast. Now, I don't know if I'm going to start this today with the Colts conversation. This may be more a Mike Chappell angle coming up tomorrow. But remember, I have talked about, I kind of wondered if Jim Irsay was going to talk, and he did not, and he is not. He will not down in West Palm Beach at the owners' meetings. We'll ask Mike tomorrow what that means, and then what is on the horizon. Because I have said this for how long now? That this team needs a player personnel director and a general manager. I think you need both. Where I think Mike and others have argued with me that both of those jobs wear the same pants. I don't think so. It's more coming up tomorrow with Mike Chappell on that, too. Coach's Tavern downtown. Me, Brent Halverson, Romy, Tommy S., and more. We'd love to see you down there coming up tomorrow. All right, 239-1070 is the number. If you can get through, give it a try. If you can't, you know the situation. Otherwise, the stream, the app, it's HD Radio and inside the AAA Membership Lounge via YouTube Live. 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
All right, quick word association here. So every time I type in busy, like I just wanted to put this in social media, busy show today, James, it comes out as bust. When you think of bust, is it like, you're a bust as a draft selection or boobs?
Well, bust, I'd probably say the draft. Busty is where I would think of
Busty?
boobs.
All right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think of boobs first. Even before, like, hopefully what Anthony Richardson isn't, that the Colts are playing this out like he is, most definitely. And so far, there's no doubt. Yeah, I think I go boobs first and then, yeah. Wind advisory, according to Sean Ash of Channel 13 WTHR. He says, wind advisory verifying, whatever the hell that means, and then some. 60-mile-an-hour non-thunderstorm gust at Indy this hour. I'm assuming the airport. So he and Buckman, where's our lady Lindsay? This got to be all hands on deck kind of afternoon right there. Where's Linz? Get there, Linz. I need you, Linz. You know what? Here's what Lynn should be doing, too, and I'm going to give her different gigs. She should be doing sports for 13. I don't know if they realize that or not. She's really good at sports. They probably don't, because I'm assuming whoever makes the decisions probably has head right up rear end. And you could get her doing both. Just me. Andy Moore, Automotive Group Hotline. Pat Boylan from the pregame show, halftime, after the game. He's the voice of the Fever. You ever come across somebody that's a decision maker that has head up rear end syndrome?
I've come up.
Are you surrounded by just nothing but genius decision makers? Is that what you're trying to tell me here?
Well, you know what? Mark Boyle actually has spoken about this before and can speak to it a lot better than I have. And I know this is just going to sound like I'm saying this to say this, but
sure.
It can run rampant in our industry, but we are very fortunate to have essentially none of that, at least around.
Well, you got Jamie Burns, right? Jamie Burns is a big decision maker. He's a smart guy.
Correct. He is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good.
And he's been there for a long time. And, the Simons are really good at hiring good people and then letting them do their work, which is it shouldn't be such a novel concept, but it kind of is.
Good for you, man. That's always good. You have to, it's funny how you can make the sports analogy in really anything and how Brad Stevens had always said this. He said this on this show and in other situations where, absolutely everybody has to be pushing in the same direction. And that is so true.
No question. No question. In fact, we were just talking about it with Eddie White at our season ticket holder event yesterday at Gainbridge Fieldhouse.
Well, that must have been about a 3-hour conversation then.
Yeah, and maybe a few unnecessary detours too. But
hey, I do want to start before we get to the Pacers and Charlotte. And again, Charlotte's been such a huge pain in the ass for the Pacers this year and in the past. That makes this a game of importance later on tonight. But when does the Fever season officially get underway? I'm talking about practice and then preseason and all that, Pat.
Yeah, I don't know if there is an official training camp schedule out, but my gut feel on that, just based on how other years have gone, is probably late April. So this month, maybe early May, but I would guess before that, because they've got a couple of preseason games and then a really cool game that I guess technically isn't a preseason game. They've got 2 technical preseason games, and then they're going to go play a game at the University of Iowa against the Brazilian women's national team, which will kind of feel like a preseason game, but I guess doesn't totally count. And that's all in early May. And then the season gets underway on late May on the 17th. So it all happens quickly. This is kind of a firestorm type of month for good reason. The Pacers will be in the playoffs. We experienced this last year with the run into late May and the Fever season starting. It's always good when the two seasons are overlapping, and so it looks like we'll hopefully get a little bit of that again.
Not good. Pat Boylan's the voice of the Fever. Of course, he's a part of both the radio and does TV as well with the Pacers. And I had mentioned when I brought you on the complete pain that Charlotte has been. I don't know why. It's regardless of the personnel, whether they have what they would like to call their frontline dudes or not, they have been such a tremendous pain. Is that more the Pacers playing down to them, or more the Hornets playing up to them, or a mixture of both from what we've witnessed this season?
Well, exactly to your point, this game kind of feels very fitting because if you were to draw a line in the sand on the season, I think you would probably draw it right after that Charlotte Hornets game on December 8th. And that might not be in the back of every fan's mind, but if you're a diehard Pacers fan, it certainly is, because Charlotte came in here on December 8th without LaMelo Ball on like a 7 or 8 game losing streak and beat the pretty full strength Pacers. And they dropped to 10-15 on that day. And then they had a bunch of days off. They didn't make the in-season tournament quarterfinals like they did last year, which provided them a few days off. And then the team that came back after a couple of practices from December 13th on has the fourth best record in the NBA since that loss to Charlotte. And the only teams in front of them are the Oklahoma City Thunder, the Cleveland Cavaliers, and the Boston Celtics. So good teams to be in front of you on a stat like that. So, yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. And I don't know what it is. You know, I think this team has been better this year at taking care of business against some of the bottom teams in the NBA. I think it's been something they've improved upon, but probably still can use some work on. But this Charlotte game just feels so full circle because at that moment on December 8th, that's probably the low point in the season, and the Pacers have been really, really good ever since. And so, yeah, I mean, another opportunity tonight against, again, like December 8th, a team that's missing LaMelo Ball and missing some key guys, and the Pacers obviously need it. They're looking to secure home court advantage in the first round of the playoffs to start a series in Indianapolis for the first time since the 13-14 season. So it's been a little bit since that's happened as well. So really meaningful one for Indiana tonight, and one that, you know, Charlotte is probably thinking toward the draft lottery at this point, and one that you would hope the Pacers would come in and take care of business in.
Yeah, he's Pat Boylan on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. I would also suggest this, too. This is a string beginning the other night of 5 games in which you really wanted to see the Pacers at least go 4-1. You know, maybe not beating Denver on the road at the Ball Arena, but you wanted to see them at least go 4-1 and then set themselves up for the very tail end of the regular season. And it looks like that they have a pretty damn good opportunity to do that.
No question. And the Denver game will easily be the toughest of those 5 on it, as you alluded to. The random one-off trip to Denver, by the way, is a unique one. I can't remember something like that this late in the season not be bunched together, or earlier in the year. That's kind of an oddity in the schedule. But you look at the other 4 games you're referencing, on paper, the toughest one you've already beaten, which was Sacramento on Monday. And so you've got the chance to play a bottom 3 team record-wise tonight, a bottom 3 team record-wise on Friday, and then that game with Washington is the other bottom 3 team. So you play the 3 teams with the 3 worst records in the NBA here coming up. And so when you talk about, they clinched the playoff berth last night, but when you talk about trying to secure the 4 seed, it's why the Pacers are such heavy favorites. If you just look at the sites that put odds with what final seed and what chances you have to end at those seeds, and there's no perfect science to that. But whatever site you go to, you find the Pacers as heavy favorites to be in the 4 spot, and it's because their schedule is pretty favorable at the end of the year. It felt like for so long the Pacers have been playing this game of catch-up where they had played 4, 5, 6, 7 more road games than home games. And then obviously the caliber of opponent, this is not the toughest stretch the Pacers have ever played in. So it all evens out at the end of the year, and a lot of that was the schedule was more difficult in the portion of the season leading up to this. But no question. I mean, the opportunity to have home court advantage in the first round speaks for itself. And to have these games in front of you that are extremely, extremely winnable is a fantastic opportunity for this team to start notching down what's necessary to get that done, to get the 4 seed.
Hey, Pat, you mentioned the Nuggets last night, too. They lose in overtime 40-39, a 61-point triple-double. What kind of nuttery is that right there? That's ridiculous. And then, by the way, lose at home.
And then lose.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. Russell Westbrook's had a great career. I don't pretend to be Michael Malone's one of the smartest coaches in the league, but man, that was rough to watch. He's always been kind of a bull in a china shop kind of guy. I don't know that he would be in my selection to try to close out a game in which you were leading, but that was rough. He missed a lay-in. For those who don't know what we're talking about, he missed a layup right at the rim with 20 seconds maybe, and then fouled on a 3.
I think you got to fight the fan on the way out too. So
I missed that, but yeah, just a rough night for him, and just an insane game for a guy that's putting up insane numbers this year. And look, I don't have an MVP vote. I get how incredibly good Oklahoma City's been and how good Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's been, but it's just crazy because you look at Jokic's numbers this year and you compare them to his previous MVPs, and they stack up not just pretty darn well, but you can make the case that this has been the best year that he's had. If it were me, I would be leading in that direction.
Yeah, when I saw him over a month ago here, it's amazing, and I was just watching him pass, where he never looks directly at the intended target. It is incredible, the feel. And he's just like one of those dudes, like we've seen the greatness of the past, whether it's Magic or Larry Bird or Jordan or anybody, that is just a couple of steps beyond everybody else. You know what I mean? It's just kind of thinking wise, play wise, a half a step, a couple of steps ahead than everybody else.
No question. I unfortunately wasn't old enough to watch Larry Bird in his prime, but that's the first name that comes to my mind, at least. And they're different players. Jokic is bigger. The passing numbers that he's putting up, Bird probably a better scorer. But, I mean, no question. You're talking about a handful of guys that just are far and away higher-level thinkers than anybody else on the floor. And what we're seeing from him this run that he's gone through over the last 4 to 5 years. When he first won that first MVP, I think a lot of people were like, wow, is this guy really an MVP caliber player? He's obviously good, but really MVP. And it's incredible how the narrative has changed on him from, is this guy really an MVP type player? And, the Nuggets are good, but not that good, right? And they've won a championship. He's won multiple of these things. And now you're looking at him as one of the all-time greats. And, we'll see what happens with the Nuggets run here if they can get another one. Their team has been kind of picked apart by the CBA and the salary cap and all of that, and be unable to keep some of those key guys. But, yeah, he's writing an individual legacy that's going to put him up there, I think, as high as maybe save LeBron James, any current player in the NBA right now.
All right, I got to run here, but a shout-out to the Regulator for being named a finalist for the NBA Teammate of the Year. Shout out to the Regulator right there. That's awesome.
Yeah, very cool to see.
Yeah. James Johnson, by the way. I call him the Regulator because he regulates both his team and others.
I was able, through context clues, to figure out who you were talking about.
Regulate. Yeah, mount up. Regulators mount up. There's only one of them. His name is James Johnson right there.
That's a good one. That's clever. I applaud you.
Thank you very much, buddy. 6:30 tonight. Pat Boylan's got you covered on the pregame show, radio network. He's all over TV, voice of the fever. He's on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline with us on this particular Wednesday afternoon. Thank you, my brother. Have a great broadcast tonight.
Thanks, John. I appreciate it.
Well, we're looking for the great content from Pat Boylan. Yeah, the Regulator, everybody. How's the Regulator never been on this show? What the hell? Am I a failure, or do I blame that on somebody else? How has the Regulator never been on? And I was looking back. I don't think he has been on when he has been anywhere. Quick break. We'll come back. Teammate of the Year. Finalist. Kevin Bowen, top of the hour. Russell Turner's the head coach of UC Irvine in the finals of the NIT, who's going to join us at 4:30. And the voice of the Final Four, his name, Ian Eagle. He will join us coming up in the 5 o'clock hour. Tickets to give away Check the phones at 239-1070 and see if they work. If not, we'll figure out another means in which to give those away over the course of the show. Don't go anywhere, but remain weather aware today. That is a high level of importance, and will help keep you updated as well. 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
trade them or just enjoy them.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Yeah. Reds add to the offensive futility of last night with a 3-hit shutout performance at the hands of the Rangers again today. Woo! And as James brings us back in, we should also recognize, I should have had you play a lot of the Val Kilmer quotes from films of the past. Val Kilmer was incredibly meaningful, especially if you're a member of Generation X, to our existence in film enjoyment. Well, you're talking about the early stages with Top Secret, which is a lightly known absolute 80s classic. Or maybe it's Real Genius, another 80s classic. Without question, as James bumped us back in with Loggins in Danger Zone, Top Gun as Iceman, there was nobody better playing that role. Seriously, that was as perfect a role as portrayed by Val Kilmer as any of the horse's ass James Spader 80s turd roles that he played, right? And they were all great because he was perfect at it. Actually, probably typecast. It's like Zabka being typecast. But Val Kilmer was perfect as Iceman. Perfect. Volleyball scenes notwithstanding. But Tombstone as Doc Holliday. Just an incredible career. And at 65 years of age, it was announced by his daughter Mercedes late last night that Val Kilmer had passed away from pneumonia at the age of 65. And clearly he'd been going through many health situations over the years. But just an incredible career. And I probably should bring up his portrayal of Jim Morrison and the Doors, too, because it was almost like he was Jim Morrison. Like, I have more of a thought as Val Kilmer as Jim Morrison as I do Jim Morrison as Jim Morrison. And I think that is the ultimate in how good somebody is as an actor. It's like Val Kilmer's Jim Morrison is now my Jim Morrison. It's incredible stuff. R.I.P. to an all-timer, Val Kilmer, on a variety of fronts. Also, the news today, as Jake and I talked about toward the end of his show, Jersey Johnny has been a staple here. John Zamasco, going back to the middle 1990s when our very own executive producer Todd Meyer was the producer of the Jersey Johnny and Grover show. And Jersey Johnny was a fan that was so interesting and so energetic in calls that he was made into a host. Transition into a host. He was also significant in the Honor Flight program, which is awesome. And out there, nobody loved the Colts more. I mean, he moved here for the Colts. Arrow down for the passing of Jersey Johnny. Arrow up for him being a part of this market and the Colts conversation for so many years. R.I.P. Jersey Johnny, John Zamasco. Kevin Bowen's going to join us from the morning show, The Other Side. And Russell Turner, the head coach of UC Irvine, a part of the NIT Finals, going to join us at the bottom. Voice of the Final Four, Ian Eagle of TBS, True TV, CBS, all the above, joins in the 5 o'clock hour. Sit tight, 93.5, 107.5, The Fan.
I'm your huckleberry. Why, Johnny Ringo, you look like somebody just walked over your grave.
Oh. R.I.P. to the great Val Kilmer. Man, what a great scene that is. How many of you right now can go out of your way and easily quote most every scene from Tombstone in 1993? Who's on track with that? What a great scene. Michael Biehn and now the late Val Kilmer, who passed away. It was announced overnight by his daughter Mercedes at the age of 65. Doc Holliday, Tombstone, 1993. Shout out right there. I was just fooling around. I wasn't. Well, oops on you, Johnny Ringo. Sorry about that. That's what happens when you just fool around. Russell Turner's the head coach of UC Irvine. They get Chattanooga in the NIT final, and really the Anteaters had a similar situation as our Sycamores had a year ago and had to make a collective decision about how they were going to play the remainder of their season. You want to roll out the balls and play, or you want to blank out and go home? They played. Championship of the NIT tomorrow night. UC Irvine, Chattanooga. Russell Turner, bottom of the hour. But on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline, morning show co-host James Boyd, Jeff Rickard. This is Kevin Bowen who joins us now. Hello, Kev. How are you?
Hey, John, you got Iron Eagle, right, coming up today, too, as well?
Yeah, no, I promoted myself right there. Did you like that? That's a new thing around here. I think some consultant came up with the idea of when you're on the air doing a show, have a promo run that promotes yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like something Jake would do, probably more than you. So, but in all seriousness, I love your Iron Eagle combos. I think it's so cool. He comes on, and then you guys just seem like best buds. So,
he's a good dude, man.
Forward to that.
The Eagle family, they'd be my favorites right there. They're a fun conversation. And plus, they're so great and they're so high-level entertainment and such. Is I can ask a question and, like, sit back and relax and know about 3 minutes later I'll come back on. That's beautiful.
Yeah, you could cut another promo to promote yourself, and, yeah.
They go 3 minutes, and Shane Steichen goes 3 words. It's kind of like that, right?
Yeah, that pretty much sums it up, yes.
It does. Hey, what do you make of the quarterback competition and all this stuff? Is there any way, shape, or form that Daniel Jones is going to start the season as the quarterback one in week one?
I mean, the Colts are certainly talking a good game about it. I still am of the belief I'll believe it when I see it. I also think you have to look absolutely horrific in training camp to look bad in training camp, if that makes sense. Like, I guess what I'm saying is, Matt Ryan didn't look alarmingly bad in training camp. These other mediocre quarterbacks the Colts have had over the years, I don't think any of them have looked, again, particularly just like egregiously bad. I mean, hell, Richardson completed 65% of his passes last year in training camp. So assuming Richardson does that or sniffs it, then I assume he's going to be the starter. I just think, kind of my overarching thought in regards to this competition is this. They are two mediocre and flawed quarterbacks. And I get that you want to have a competition, but I think in the end game, however it goes, if you're breaking up their reps or splitting their reps, you're still going to have a mediocre quarterback when it's all said and done. Like, can you really make substantial changes to your level of play? Richardson is probably the one that I think of the most because the thought is, hey, here's this healthy NFL offseason and the first one he's had, and he's making substantial changes to him fundamentally, but then you're going to split his reps. Okay, well then how does it not become robotic, when week one rolls around and what gets real? So it's all just pretty confusing to me, honestly.
No, it's really silly is what it is. Because let's just say, if Daniel Jones starts in week one, why are we blanking around with any of this? Seriously. Why don't you just wipe the slate clean and start again? I don't care about the lack of quarterbacks in this year's draft or any of that. You could do the same thing with Daniel Jones. Why are we messing with any of this if that's how you feel going in? regarding Richardson right now, which clearly is not a good feel.
Yeah, I'll go back to the combine. We had Chris Ballard on, and I certainly respect Ballard for actually answering the question. We haven't heard from Jim Irsay, for the past, well, I guess we really haven't heard from him since training camp in kind of a group setting. And so, I asked Ballard something effective, why do you feel like you are getting the ninth year? Certainly you would want to ask Irsay, why is he getting the ninth year? But, Ballard, I thought, answered it in a pretty candid manner and basically saying, and I'm paraphrasing a bit, but he basically said, when they fired Frank Reich and they decided to go the first-time head coach, and then they decided to take Anthony Richardson fourth overall, that they were creating a window. They were creating a longer-term vision. They were, whether they said it publicly or not, they were not in this win-now mode. And so patience is probably what they were indirectly asking for with this. And it sounded like Jim Irsay certainly signed off on all of it. And you signed off on it to have Anthony Richardson, try to grow. And again, see what you have there, not to have, Daniel Jones 70 starts into his NFL career, try and do something rather unprecedented and resurrecting his own career here. So, yeah, I mean, when you brought him back at the end of the year, I don't think it was done with the thought of, hey, maybe we'll go out and get Daniel Jones, and he played really good against us in that 2022 season. Maybe that'll overshadow his 69 other starts he has in his NFL career.
Hey, Kev, we know that's not the real reason, right? Don't we know, we know what the real reason is. I mean, it is they're going to play this out. Chris is the decision maker right now because, Jim is going to be told, but there's no way, because we didn't hear from Jim in Florida, and I'm assuming there's no way that Jim could go through, a rigorous set of circumstances, or you have to find a new GM and head coach here. So you let it play out and see if it rewrites itself in this case, and if not, in the offseason, you're feeling better about it, and you go about this. If this were Jeff Saturday interim season, this would have all been wiped clean, Kev. It would have.
Do you think a healthy
yes,
Jim, or let's say
100%. Yes.
So, 5 years ago, Jim Irsay has already fired Chris Ballard, is what you're saying.
Yeah, the year that we went through, and I called it a circus, but, I mean, it was not sitting on your hands. This is sitting on your hands. Yeah. If there was a feeling better, about being able to go all through this, or if there was, like I will tell you this, and I've said this before, and I don't know if you and I have had this conversation, but I know Mike Chappell and I have, I know Stephen Holder and I had, and they disagree with me. But one of these days, there's going to be an ops, football operations, and a general manager and a head coach. It's going to be three heads, and not just two.
Yeah, I would say, just to kind of go back to our last point about Irsay and, in regards to his health and how involved he is right now, he is certainly more involved right now, or at least over the last 5 months, than he was this time last year. Remember, correct me if I'm wrong, but he wasn't at that Colts Texans Week 18 game, was he? The win and get in game?
Yeah.
I mean, that was, the biggest football game your stadium has had in since the last playoff game. So 9 years, and the owner that loves football more than any other owner in the league isn't at that game. It's just, that was stunning. And obviously that was to do with his health. Whereas this year, he was at the Week 18 game. He was at the Ring of Honor game. We saw the Colts put out the video of him, post game after that Jacksonville loss. So I guess what I'm saying is this off season, he is at least speaking. He's doing it, in a virtual manner, or he's doing it more behind the scenes.
Right.
Whereas this time last year, we weren't seeing any of that. So there was a thought late in the year that I had of, okay, we saw him at the Ring of Honor.
Yeah.
We heard him in the booth with Greg and Rick Venturi. And, in training camp, he did hold a group session. Those things are a little, okay, he's inching closer. Yes, is he getting on a plane and, going to interview head coaching candidates? No, probably not. But, in today's lifestyle, we could probably do a lot of things virtually anyways with that. So that's where that thought was a little bit in my head of okay, could there be something here? But then again, you hear Ballard's words describe it, it seems like, whether it was written in stone or not, that, him and Jim agreed to this a couple of years ago, and that was going to be that.
Yeah, I just, he is going to make the final decision on matters of that magnitude of general manager, of head coach, of direction of quarterback. I think ultimately what is going to be a director of player personnel, or, more of a figurehead type of get out in front of everybody and talk when he doesn't or can't. And I just, listen, do I think he's in a better spot than he was? There's no question about that. But it's unfortunate that we couldn't hear from him at the owners' meetings this week, because I thought that would be some important dialogue that everybody kind of needs to hear. At some point we will, but also at some point there's a reason why, a transition wasn't made, when really in the past, in any other set of circumstances, there would have been changes.
Yeah, and I just think it's a disappointment and a bummer, I think, to the fan base as well. Like, you haven't heard just a little bit more on the why behind it. And I guess I'm putting kind of Irsay's overall health to the side a little bit, because, we have heard from him, again, whether it is, in that locker room week 18, or, hell, he did plenty of Zoom sessions with us during COVID. Like, even if physically he doesn't want to get out and about and hold a press conference standing at a podium, again, you can do things virtually. But, leaders lead in times of great success and great failure. And right now you are in a time period of immense failure. I mean, you're in your worst playoff drought in 30 years. And so for your fan base not to hear from someone that is typically good or bad, we had heard from Irsay, at every walk over the years, certainly more good than bad based off how the franchise was performing. To not have that right now, I think is a big bummer.
It's tough. It is tough, because you go into this year and people want to say, well, there's unknown. Well, there's not really. I mean, there's known. And what we know right now you don't like. And it really does look like the seasons that Colts fans have gone through in the past. And then if you get that type of season, there's going to be an acclimation process coming up next year, and the time that it takes to come back from that. And I don't blame the fans out there and the advertisers out there for being fed up. I don't, because this has taken far too stinking long. It just has.
Yeah. And one general question is, who is tied at the hip? You would think it is Ballard, Steichen, and Richardson.
I think it's the whole family, I believe, right here. And not the Irsay family, but all those figureheads that we talked about. Yeah, it is either one shining moment or it's see you later type of stuff here, Kev.
Which, again, that question then becomes like, okay, so if Daniel Jones for some reason takes over and win 8 or 9 games, again, all these crazy hypotheticals that have certainly crossed my mind.
Or if Anthony Richardson is better. And I know that nobody buys that, including me, but if he is better, what happens if he comes back and all of a sudden, what if this quarterback guru, teaches him how to throw a 12-yard pass to somebody not 25 yards out of bounds? I mean, it's what you're looking for right here.
I think if Richardson's better and they sniff 500, we're doing the song and dance for another year.
Yeah, there's no doubt. Part of me wants to see that, because I want you need something solid, and there hasn't been solid footing. This so looks like the 2 to 3 decade Cincinnati Bengals, seriously, right now. It is just you're going in 19 different directions and none of them work. And I want them to get out of that mode as quickly as possible. And I just don't think there's no quick fix for it. I don't think, and if there is, that, Kev, I think would be it.
Right, and, a lot of people could look quarterback-wise of, okay, are you just chalking this up to a lost season? And then, okay, 2026 draft, where are you drafting? Are you high enough to get a quarterback, et cetera, et cetera? And that's why no answer is one I would say with conviction. But if you were to make me pick one that I would do, I would say, all right, healthy offseason, Anthony Richardson, first of your NFL career. You're the one that was the 4th overall pick. You have an unbelievable highlight reel. you don't do boring well enough. Let's commit to you this offseason. It's your first healthy one. Let's see what these fundamentals look like. Let's see what the retooling of your mechanics look like and see what happens. That's the route that has he earned the right for that? No, but neither has Daniel Jones. So, neither quarterback has earned the right to probably have 100% of the snaps. This is the bed that you've made for yourself. But having said that, if I'm going to pick one or the other right now, that's the path I would. They aren't going down that, but that's the path that I would go down.
Morning show co-host, along with James Boyd and Jeff Rickard, Kevin Bowens on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. So the Pacers are solidly in the postseason. They get a tremendous pain in the ass in Charlotte later on tonight. But I did want to ask you this. First round postseason, would you rather? This is a good game of would you rather. Did you ever play would you rather in college?
Oh, sure. Sure.
Would you rather see the Pistons or the Bucks as the Pacer competition?
I would. Boy, I might be in the minority of this. I think I'd rather see the Pistons. Giannis would still scare me.
Okay.
Giannis would still scare me a little bit. I get that Detroit has certainly been the more consistent team. Obviously, they've got a little chippy from a Pacers standpoint. I still am a little confused exactly what it would look like, for them in a playoff setting. And I get Milwaukee's been in a tailspin, but I don't know. There's a little bit of Giannis just nervousness in a 7-game series there that I would probably opt for Detroit over Milwaukee.
Man, it was such a ridiculous decision for the postseason. I mean, you want the availability, which clearly that's the reason why Middleton was traded, but damn. I mean, you took away a guy. That guy was big-time shot maker on one leg, on two leg, whatever, last year in the first round when they were without. So that was a hell of a deal you made for a dude in Kyle Kuzma that's not that. So interesting, the dynamic.
I mean, a couple Bucks teams ago, it felt like they had a team that Giannis could have one of these nights where, even if he didn't score 30, they could hit 18 threes, falling out of bed, and it just doesn't seem like that. Now, Detroit, has added a little bit of playoff experience. They're not totally absent of that, but still, their lead guys, wouldn't be there. And I don't know, maybe there'd be a little bit of a deer in headlights with it. I do think I would much rather play Cleveland around 2 than Boston. And I know record-wise that's different, but if you want to play the, how do you get back to the Eastern Conference final game, Boston's played a lot better lately. Cleveland has not. I would rather play, and the Cleveland's going to have that weight on their shoulders as the 1 seed, all of that. So I think your ideal path right now would be a 4. You get Detroit round 1, you get Cleveland round 2. And I know there are a lot of people that would disagree with that. Some might say the total reverse of that. They'd rather play Milwaukee and then Boston, but that's what I would opt for.
All right. So is Cam Heide going to go back to his home state, Minnesota? What happens to Miles Colvin? What do you think about this Boilermaker team that's going through, I don't know if you'd want to call it the growing pains of the transfer portal. I think they're going to be okay. And Connor Enright is down in Bloomington. And what you see Darren DeVries trying to cobble together through the transfer portal in year 1.
Well, Purdue definitely needs a wing. I mean, they need some sort of 6-ish, 3-and-D type of guy. I mean, I thought, Heide probably a little bit more than Colvin, but I thought both of them gave them some important minutes there late in the season. Matt, I mean, you guys have had this conversation. I mean, Matt started those guys early in the year. I mean, that was a little bit of the thought process there, thinking that they would kind of be your wings, if you will. So Purdue definitely needs that, and it sounded like Matt Painter was, I don't know if he was anticipating both of them, but, he mentioned, 1 to 2 additions. They obviously got the big dude from South Dakota State. Yeah, Indiana, boy, they just need, frankly, bodies. I was surprised Ryan Conwell didn't end up there. It just seemed like a perfect situation for him based off, ample minutes, ample scoring opportunities. You're obviously close to home, not that Louisville's, that much further, of course. But, I think that was a little bit of a missed opportunity there. So, yeah, Indiana's going to need a lot.
I think it's like the last 2 years with Conwell. Right? Because I thought Conwell was going to be there last year. He ended up in Cincinnati at Xavier. So
yeah. I mean, Indiana needs. I mean, they need front court help. I mean, hell, all they got is what DeVries' kid, and
yeah. We both agree on this, Kev,
yeah,
too.
right.
I would more be interested to see what DeVries does because we saw, especially last year, was magnified. They did as well on the transfer portal as anybody on the college basketball landscape, and we saw how the lack of continuity worked out for them. So maybe there's more of an idea in what you're working on here and just not with the name recognition that comes along with it.
Well, I think DeVries his ideal building is going to be a little bit more Painter-like, honestly. It's going to be a little bit more of a, no, I'm going to identify pieces that I think fit us. It might not be the guys that show up on the McDonald's All-American game, but this is the route that I believe in. And honestly, the Enright pickup, the kid that was a point guard for him at Drake and with Chris Holtman at DePaul last year, I mean, he seems to be a super pass-first point. If you compared his resume to Miles Rice's last year, I mean, they're very different. Miles Rice, much more accomplished. But again, I think the thought is, well, if I'm going to put, Tucker DeVries on the floor and we're going to go out and try to get another scorer in the transfer portal, I want more of a pass-first point guard that's going to run my system. So I think early on you're already seeing a little glimpse into more of that and less of the, hey, let's just get the 5 best basketball players and throw the ball out there compared to, no. I'm trying to put a little bit of a puzzle together. Now, it's hard. I mean, obviously he's going to have to build recruiting classes, but I think that's what you're seeing, a little bit of that.
What time's the Crown tonight? Butler and Boise State in the Crown.
I believe it's 7.
Son of a gun.
And I think it's a Gus Johnson call. I think you got Gus and Jim Jackson doing the old Crown.
You think this is going to be like a Fox one-off here where they go, I don't know if this paid off or not?
Yeah. I mean, I don't. I mean, I know Jamil Telford is sitting out for Butler. I mean, I'm sure there's other players from other teams that are already doing it. And it's so late. Like, if these guys wanted to just play for a week, try to make some NIL money, then get in the portal, they could do that if you did it a little bit earlier. But the fact that it's so late is just different.
Yeah, it's tough. There's no doubt about that. Hey, good conversation with Rickard this morning on potty training. Well done.
I felt for Jeff. He said he didn't get a lot of sleep last night. He fell for a couple of April Fool's jokes. I don't know if you caught that.
He did? Yeah.
Fell for the Hunter Dickinson guy.
No, he didn't. Did he really?
Yeah. I think he maybe fell for a Mark Sears is transferring to Auburn.
Wow.
So, yeah.
The ultimate banana in the tailpipe, Jeff Rickard.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, I try to, whatever, bring us down to earth with potty training. I don't know if it rang true, though.
Buddy, I appreciate you, man. We'll be listening coming up tomorrow morning. James back, too?
James is back, indeed. Yep, and Mark Dykton as well from his.
Oh, wait a minute. Hold on a second. Do we have to roll out the red carpet for Dr. Vacation's ass to be back here?
Yep, back to Disney, I think, next week for him. So we'll get him for a few days, and probably Corbin Lingenfelter and Kylan Talley will be with us.
My goodness. Constant vacation. Life's a vacation for Mark Dykton in the morning, 7 until 10 a.m. That is the morning show. Kevin Bowen is a part of that on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. Thank you, brother.
See you, John.
All right, Russell Turner on the other side, the head coach of UC Irvine. Some similarities to that of our Sycamores a year ago, and an NIT final with Chattanooga coming up tomorrow night at Hinkle Fieldhouse. That and Ian Eagle, voice of the Final Four, 30 minutes away. It's 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
and the beat goes on. 93.5 and 107.5, The Fan.
Hey, a busy one for you. Tomorrow, by the way, Coach's Tavern downtown, Heaven Hill Distillery. Me and Brent Halverson and Romy and Tommy S. Going to have a hell of a time coming up tomorrow. Ian Eagle, the voice of the Final Four. CBS, TBS, True TV. I could probably just say Turner and CBS coming up here at the top of the hour. Friend of the show, Ian Eagle. We got a lot of college hoop to talk about, too. Transfer portal news. But, of course, coming up on Thursday night, there's an NIT championship to be played for at Hinkle Fieldhouse. Chattanooga and UC Irvine punching their tickets with wins last night in the semifinal round. And the head coach of the Anteaters, UC Irvine, he is joining us now, Russell Turner, on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. Hey, Russell, thank you very much for the time. Congratulations on the win last night.
Hey, thanks very much. I appreciate you having me and UC Irvine on your show.
Oh, man, let me tell you this. A similar situation, and I want to compare and contrast, if you don't mind. I'm a graduate at Indiana State, and last year Indiana State was in the NIT, and they were going through, at least from my viewpoint, something similar to what you and your team were going through. Because you're disappointed because you didn't win the Big West and you didn't get that auto bid and you left out of Selection Sunday. But then 3 days later, I mean, you had to pick your ass up and go play because you still wanted to play. And that was the situation for Indiana State. They got it together, I think, around the 10-minute mark of the second half against SMU a year ago. How difficult was that for you and your team to pick it up and be a part of this and be at your best?
Yeah, it's really incredibly hard to be in a one-bid league and to drop that championship game, which feels like a play-in game for the NCAA tournament. You know, so if you win it, you feel like you're on top of the mountaintop, and if you lose it, you feel like you failed. Well, then 3 days later, you got to play again. You know, nobody can imagine a Super Bowl loser having to play 3 days later, you know, when you have such an emotional type game like that. So it was really hard. Add to that, we were in exams at UC Irvine during that week. So we had a lot weighing on our guys, along with the coming transfer portal and everything else. But I did feel like if we were able to get the first win, we could build some momentum. And now that's what we've done. So we're really excited to be playing.
Yeah. Did it take a moment, too, in that first game? Because when I remember with Indiana State, it was a slog. It really was, until there was maybe a flipping of the switch at about the 10-minute mark in the second half. And it was at home in Terre Haute for them. But it took a little bit even in the game to get guys going.
Yeah, there's no question about that. We've been to the NIT a bunch, but never had a home game. And I really feel like being at home this time was a difference making, because when you get a little crowd juice behind you and your competitive instincts, you know, are spurred a little bit to kick in, that's usually what can happen. And that happened to us. It sounds like that's what happened to Indiana State too. And I think we are very similar teams, because they could have easily been included in the NCAA tournament last year and won games. And my team this year, I think, is the same.
Yeah, and there was that level of disappointment that you have where you kind of put your arms up and go, oh, yeah. So, and you feel like not playing. But I think that's where, Russell, you have to have some truly competitive dudes on your roster.
Yes.
And clearly that's you
right.
do, because I think that's the difference between half-assing something and getting ousted in that first game and really being disappointed, or moving on and getting to where you are with your team coming up tomorrow night.
Yeah, weaknesses get exposed in situations like that. So you got to not only be really competitive, but you got to have a group that's connected and that likes each other, because if you pull apart at all, you can't survive. And Indiana State did that, went on a run. Now we've done the same thing, and we're excited to be in here in Indy. People have been great to us, and we're really looking forward to the challenge that we face tomorrow playing UT Chattanooga.
Yeah, we'll talk about that matchup coming up in just a minute. Russell Turner's the head coach of UC Irvine. He's been there since the 10-11 campaign. I'm assuming, too, you're the only Virginia accent in Orange County. Is that correct?
Yeah, you're kind of calling it a Virginia accent. That is where I'm from.
Well,
but most people in California just call it a country accent.
Yeah, well, I mean, you sound like you're from like the Ward and Jeff Burton household a little bit.
Yeah, you got it. Yeah, that's a good recognition right there. I've kept my wife and I from the same place. She doesn't have an accent at all anymore. Yeah. You know, I've kept mine, and I tease her that she's in disguise.
Well, you can always give them a good Walton's Mountain reference, I'm assuming, there in Southern California. Hey, dealing with a roster in the now, looking to next year, and the way that NIL and the transfer portal is right now, we know I just brought you in talking about Purdue and IU here locally. How is that for you and your team and UC Irvine? And how much of a selling point is, in general terms, your location in Southern California?
Yeah, every school is going to try to leverage its strengths, and so our location is one of our strengths. Our university community is too, and we're all trying to figure out the answer to the question you just asked. I think there's going to be reshuffling on every roster to some degree. We've not had as much of that, I think, in our program as many others have had, and that's one of the reasons why we're still playing, and we're playing well because we got some continuity. But that transfer portal volatility can hit us at any moment. And I do imagine that we're going to have some interesting discussions with my guys once our season's over. But right now, my team's been really focused. I've got a bunch of young players who've really improved their value this year. So we're going to have good discussions about how that can be for us moving forward in our program, and hopefully show them that we'll continue to be the best spot where they can improve their value if they're playing the long game. You know, in the past, it's all been about a player's value being related to his education and his character development and his leadership development. Now, very clearly, development as a basketball player is really vital to the value equation that players are seeking.
Hey, Russell, I was at Indiana State in a Jackass, and I can honestly tell you right now, had I been good enough at basketball, I can't imagine how I would handle this situation. You were very good at basketball collegiately. How would you have handled a similar situation? I mean, how would you look at it in terms of what may be coming at you in offers compared to what we were just discussing, that of loyalty?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because I think every person, every guy looks at that differently. And you can have a great brain and great character and see it one way and have the same thing and see it another way. You know, I've been at Irvine 15 years. Some of that has been by my choice. There have been opportunities for me to make a big change and maybe make some more money or do something different. But I've elected to do what I've done. And a lot of that has been about my family and about my background and about bringing what's important to me. I don't envy these young kids who have these choices because of how many other influences surround them. Many of them have to deal with their parents and agents and this incredible fear that many young people have of missing out on something, maybe in the short term, that distracts them from having a more long-term view. Those are tough questions that guys are being forced into maturing quickly around. And I'm doing the best I can to help them here. And, you know, what I say is that I'll respect any choice that my players make. I'm about the players. I learned that in my time coaching in the NBA. That's the best attitude to take if you're a coach.
Yeah, and really, this is so much of what it's like. And, you know, obviously they started out with name, image, likeness, and everybody knew it was going to turn into a level of free agency, which it has. And I was going to ask about your NBA days on the bench and the influence that had for you to be able to navigate where you are right now for the past 15 years at Irvine.
Yeah, I think it's been a huge advantage. You know, when I went to the NBA, I was very young. I was only 34 at the time going into the NBA as an assistant coach. And I had so many people ask me about how difficult it must be to coach guys making all that money. And the perception was that they had attitude. And I said, no, it's really quite different than that. The guys that are getting paid the most or have the potential to get paid like that have been the most receptive guys I've ever been around to good coaching. And I feel that's the case now, too. As there's more at stake for players, there's more opportunity for coaches to do a great job in helping guys. That's what I'm trying to stay focused on. I think we're doing that well as a program here. I think we just have to accept that there's more volatility until there's more, you know, built-in structure to the contracts. Right now, everybody's going to be on 9-month deals, even less than that. And if you deny that that's the reality, I think you're fooling yourself a little bit.
And we've seen this have an ill effect on some, especially in the coaching ranks. And I've always said this on this show. I love basketball. I still try to play at a really half-ass level at 55, 4 and 5 days a week.
Don't get hurt. Yeah.
Well, you know, so I'm going because once you stop, that's when you get hurt and then come back. But I'm gonna play until somebody probably brings the paddles out while I'm on the court because I love it that much and love the game. And I think that's why I'm willing to move forward with really anything because I love the game of basketball. And I think that is in large part what a lot of folks, especially deeply entrenched like you are as a coach at Irvine, you have to have that love of the game to withstand and navigate through a lot of these particular pitfalls of which you have to go through right now.
Yeah, I think that love of the game is important. And it's also important to have the humility, you know, to recognize how hard it is for these players to make tough choices. Any of us faced with those choices would struggle. You know, if you could easily move to another place for a lot more money, you would struggle with that choice. Any professional would. And it's just a big shift in the minds of some to see these guys as being in more professional situations. But that's the reality, and I think we all got to embrace it. And those of us who adapt best and do the best jobs will continue to be able to benefit.
It's Chattanooga and UC Irvine, the championship game of the NIT, coming up at 9 o'clock. That's tomorrow night at Hinkle Fieldhouse. Let's start right here at Chattanooga. We saw their win over Loyola Chicago last night out of the A-10 for Loyola. I'm curious, do we start with that backcourt? Because it is pretty damn good.
Yeah, they're terrific. You know, I don't know if you know this, but really interesting dynamic for the game between us and them is that our starting point guard transferred to us from UT Chattanooga last year, where he spent his freshman year. We know that backcourt is really good. They're a dynamic pair of small guards, but Chattanooga has played really well recently. They've won 15 out of 16 games, I think, and are also relying on an emerging pair of young big guys. They're a really impressive offensive team. I think we're the opposite of that. We're a really impressive defensive team, so it should be an interesting matchup.
Hi, former player in this game of this magnitude, is it? How does that work for you? How does that work for you as the coach? How does that work for your team?
Well, hey, I'd give anything to be able to, strap on my shoes again and go out there and set a pick or lay a foul or something.
Yes, you would. Yeah.
My age. But I really try to imagine everything from the position of being a player, and I think that's where the great advantages come from having played. You know, you remember some of those moments, and it's not about me. It's about what I can give to my team in terms of confidence, about their ability to perform, in terms of, competitive spirit, about our ability to adjust if things, don't go the way we want. And then maybe I can give them some stability when things inevitably don't go exactly the way we intend. I compete at that just the same way as I competed to get a rebound when I was playing. So that's what I try to set the tone with, is my own competitiveness and the role that I've got now, and try to help these guys chase what they want. I say all the time, if you're willing to fight for what you want, you're going to have a great experience in our program. And I think that's what we're going to do tomorrow night.
For those geography fans out there, Coach Turner is from Roanoke, Virginia, a native of Roanoke, which is not too far from Mount Airy, North Carolina, which is home base
right.
of Mayberry and the Andy Griffith Show, which we love a great deal around here. So
yeah, I saw a lot of Andy Griffith Show coming up.
Yes, you had a lot of gaps. There's a lot of gaps where you grew up. There's like a fancy gap, and there's all kinds. Everything's a gap.
Yeah.
Right? There's no valleys. It's a gap.
Right. That's right. That's right.
So how's everybody treating you here in Indy? You having a good time?
Oh man, the people here have been so great to us. It's not like in California, in Southern California especially, it's not like it's been here for us. People have not only been friendly, they've been just tremendously respectful. I took my team to St. Elmo's the first night we were here. Having worked in the NBA, I'd been there a few times and had benefited from a coach taking the team of mine there. So I took my guys there, and it was incredible, the food. They didn't know quite what to do with the shrimp cocktail, what to expect. But when we got up to leave, You know, we were all in our sweatsuits because we'd come straight from the plane.
Yeah.
When we got up to leave and walked out, each room stood up and applauded my guys.
Oh.
And that was so cool for these players to experience because it was a great indication of what it's like here in Indianapolis and in Indiana, the state. You know, we had talked about the movie Hoosiers. I'd only had 4 guys who hadn't seen it, and I required them all to see it before we got on the plane. But you know, they don't have a sense the same way as I do growing up in the ACC country for what basketball means to so many people here. But we can feel it with the way we've been treated by everybody we've encountered here in Indianapolis. So we're grateful.
That is awesome story right there. Russell Turner's the head coach of UC Irvine. The anteaters, by the way, you don't have an anteater, correct? Are there anteaters on campus?
There's not an anteater that I know of on campus. There's one deer in a zoo. You know, my kids were young when I took the job, and I joked that we were going to get an anteater for a backyard. But you can't tame an anteater to hold them at the house or keep them on campus.
I'd imagine so. Hey, Russell, it's been a pleasure to speak with you. The best of luck coming up tomorrow night in the NIT final, and continue to enjoy your stay here in Indy.
I appreciate it. I will, and I really thank you for having me and UC Irvine on your show.
You got it. Russell Turner, the head coach of UC Irvine on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. That is a tremendous story at St. Elmo. Well done. Well done, everybody. Indy, that's outstanding. All right, quick break. We'll come back. The voice of the Final Four, Iron Eagle, top of the hour. More to come. By the way, Chattanooga and UC Irvine tomorrow night, 9 o'clock at Hinkle Fieldhouse for an NIT championship right there. Good conversation. Quick break. Back with you next.
on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
I love that conversation with the head coach of UC Irvine, Russell Turner. Podcast 1075thefan.com. You guys enjoyed that too. The San Elmo story was outstanding. Well done. James over there, I'm John. Thank you very much. We are also weather aware, keeping track of that. We'll keep you updated too. To the southwest, I know it is going to get extremely bad. Down toward where I grew up, extremely bad coming up a little bit later on today. But we shall keep you updated. My Reds, another lost day. In this case, an afternoon. 3 hit by the Rangers and shut out again by the Rangers. 1-0. I saw this from our friend Lance McAllister of the big one. Steer, Fraley, Candelario, Lux, Dunn, Trevino, and Espinal. 16 for 101. That is a robust 158. How about that? So it may be time to get going. Other afternoon games, Paul Skeens, the win for the Pirates 4-2 over the Rays in Tampa. Brewers 3, Royals 2. That's who the Reds get in Milwaukee over the weekend. And the Cardinals, I believe at one point in time, that game was tied at 5. The Cardinals score 7 unanswered and beat the Angels 12-5. Was the final there. Now, games ongoing this afternoon in Major League Baseball. Twins and White Sox in a rain delay, no score. Nationals and Blue Jays. Toronto a 3-1 advantage. Bottom of the 6th inning from north of the border. Top of the 4th inning, 6-2 Cubs over the Athletics. Suzuki a couple of home runs in that game for the Cubs. Giants 5, Astros 1, bottom of 2 in Houston. 3rd inning, no score, Guardians and the Padres. Mariners 2, Tigers 0, top of 4 from Seattle. And just underway with the Mets on the board, 1-0 over the Marlins. Bottom of the 1st inning, everything else coming at you later on tonight, including the Diamondbacks and the Yankees at 7:05 and 8:30, 8 or so. Braves and Dodgers from L.A. coming up later on this evening. All right, we got the Final Four, 1v1, v1, v1, with my opportunity with Diamond Madness and then our bar restock. Just like the Price is Right, for me to win not just one, but both showcases. The opportunity is there. We're not discuss that, but I just thought I'd bring it up. Ian Eagle, voice of the Final Four, staked out in San Antonio, is going to join us about the matchups coming up on Saturday in the national semifinals, and then who will ring the bell coming up on Monday in the national championship game, plus his thoughts just on the whole tournament so far itself. Ian Eagle, voice of the Final Four, coming up on the other side. Don't go anywhere. It is 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
JMV.
You get nothing. You lose. Good day, sir.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Pacers Hornets tonight, 7 o'clock. 6:30 coverage begins right here. We'll be watching as well the Pistons on the road at OKC this evening. Meantime, you hear the music in the background. Of course, coming up this weekend, it's 1v1 in San Antonio at the Alamo Dome. And the voice you will hear will bring you all the action. National semifinal games on Saturday, national championship game coming up on Monday, CBS, TNT, TBS, True TV, and really everything in between. Friend of the show and voice of the Final Four, Ian Eagle, joins us now. Hello, Ian. How are you?
Hey, what's up, JMV? How you doing?
Are we staked out in San Antonio and ready to rock?
We are not there yet. No.
Okay.
No. Recharging the battery. Had some NBA earlier this week, and then making my way down to Texas tomorrow to get ready for the two matchups: 1-1, 1-1. National championship on Monday.
What does the voice of the Final Four do to recharge the batteries?
I needed some sleep. That was the first thing that I required.
Nice.
I did a little bit of work yesterday, spill over into today. I've had three of the teams in the tournament already. So Auburn, Duke, Florida, I've seen all three. Houston, I just hedged a little bit about a month ago, 5 weeks ago. I started doing some random boards. I had some time off in between NBA games, and I did a Houston board. I did an Auburn board. I did a Florida board. I just, for some reason, thought, hey, there's a chance I might see these teams. I might as well commit the 6 to 8 hours that it requires to do a deep dive. And it paid off with those teams emerging, and I think we have the four best teams in college basketball. It's not often that we can say that for the Final Four, but I think that's an accurate statement.
It's Ian Eagles on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. So what's been your level of enjoyment of this tournament? Because it has not had, the whole underdog flair or flavor as we would like to normally see, but having the number ones and knowing that it's the best of the best this season coming up in San Antonio on Saturday night, how has this tournament been for you?
Yeah, I think that it's often a double-edged sword. I've had years where I had upsets, and the second round hasn't been as entertaining because you had a team that really outkicked its coverage emerge out of the first round, and then the clock struck midnight in the second round. Or a team then gets to the second weekend, but they get overmatched by an opponent in that Sweet 16 or Elite Eight. I had that St. Peter's run a few years ago where they shocked everybody, got to the Elite Eight, beat Purdue, as you well remember, in the Sweet 16, only to get thumped by North Carolina in the East Regional Final. So I know we tend to think of the tournament based on Cinderellas, but I also think there are many memorable moments based on high level of play and teams that create really good basketball. And that's what we might be staring at this year for the Final Four. You look at Ken Palm, which is probably the most digestible way to understand analytics, and these have been the four best teams. If you look through offensive rating, defensive rating, their net ratings are top four, and four of the best teams ever in what they do and how they do it. So we're at a new place. There's no doubt in college basketball. I don't know if we're here forever. I think that often becomes what people surmise that, well, that's it. We're never going back. We're never going to see the upsets again. I don't know that to be true. There'll be a correction here. There'll be a regulation, I'm sure, put in, and there might be salary slots eventually that the big-time programs have to adhere to. But for now, for this year, and maybe for the next 3 to 5 years, we could be seeing a whole lot more of this.
You think the story going into Saturday, at least to start with here, and you can say certainly that first game, but maybe in both games to start is the health of Janai Broome. I know that Bruce Pearl has said he's going to be good to go. I think engaging in practice coming up tomorrow. But, still, given the circumstances of his level of effectiveness and what is necessary, is that a starter? Good story there?
Yeah, I would tell you when we saw the replay in real time, the slow motion replay of the play itself, my reaction, Grant Hill's reaction, Bill Raftery's reaction, in unison, we all delivered a ooh, because anyone that watched the play could see that was not normal. That was awkward in how he landed. And you could pick any one of three potential issues with an ankle injury, with a wrist, with an elbow. None of it looked good. So for him to leave the game, exit, he definitely mouthed the words, "I'm done." I saw it. I needed to report it because I saw it. And I think everybody else watching the game saw it. He said it to a staff member. He said it to a teammate. His mom meets him down near the tunnel area. And you're thinking at that point, okay, if Auburn is going to the Final Four, they're doing it without Johni Broome, the SEC Player of the Year. He emerges from the tunnel. My first thought process was, he's joining his teammates. He's going to get dapped up on the sideline, but really only to one hand because he can't really work his other arm. And then all of a sudden he's at the scores table ready to check in. And you're of a certain age. I'm of a certain age. You start thinking about Willis Reed. You start thinking about that kind of comparison. I mention it. I didn't make it the pronounced version of the call. It was the secondary part, but there's probably 1% of the audience that thought the same thing. Like, man, this is like a Willis Reed type moment. I have no idea how he responds. I have no idea medically what they might be able to do to make it more comfortable for him. My sense is he's going to try to grit it out and grind it out, but we don't know his effectiveness. And he's a big part of what they do. They have great guard play. We saw it from Denver Jones. We saw it from Tahad Pettiford. They have talent around him, but he is the centerpiece and the anchor of who they are. And I do think he's the heart and soul of their team. They feed off him. We had a chance to spend some time with the team during the off day Saturday, Bruce Pearl and a bunch of the players. And they're a loose group. They joke around a lot. They rank on one another. They're busting chops a lot, and it works for them. It is something that I've seen them carry into the games. They don't get tight. They respond during pressure because of their cohesiveness. But this is a legitimate story, JMV. I don't think there's any way of getting around it, and his impact is profound.
He is Iron Eagle, voice of the Final Four on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. You brought up Tahad Pettiford. I think you can make an argument that he has been among these Final Four teams, with the talent that we're talking about here, among the most exciting. Has he not, of this tournament so far?
Yeah, I don't know how you felt watching him. I see Brandon Jennings comparisons in his body type, in the way he moves, in his jump shot, in his elusiveness, in his confidence. He just reminded me a great deal of the former Milwaukee Buck and Arizona star. He's slight. He's 6'1", 175. He's got great lift, and he believes in his abilities. You can feel it, and I think he's been a breakout star in this NCAA tournament. He's not going to surprise anybody. He's certainly not going to surprise Florida, and that's part of the storyline too, JMV. These teams know each other. They have even deeper bonds than that because Todd Golden was the director of basketball operations for Auburn when Bruce Pearl got the job. He is best friends with Stephen Pearl, Bruce's lead assistant and defensive coordinator of the team, and his son. So there's a lot of connective tissue there. The way they built their teams are very similar as well. They've gone deep into the transfer portal. They found some guys that may have been overlooked elsewhere. And collectively, both of these teams, at different times, it was Auburn for the majority of the season. It was Florida very late in the season. But they looked like the best team in America at various points. Florida, what they did in the SEC tournament, their run into the NCAA tournament. Auburn, from mid-January to early March, they were the number one team in the country. They had a little drop-off defensively at the end of the year into the SEC tournament, but they found it again come NCAA tournament time. So just familiar foes, no one is going to get surprised by what the other one does. And I think that's a big narrative in this first game, that these two teams have earned the right to be where they are, a chance to go to the national championship.
It is interesting to look at these four teams, and there is certainly not a team that's more representative of their head coach than what Kelvin Sampson has, and that's basically his formula. That's what he's done at Houston, and we see them in the Final Four. It is basically exactly what he wants, with pieces of the puzzle put together that makes them a 1 seed and a challenger for a national title.
Yes, and I don't know if people can completely appreciate what he's done with that program. They were nowhere. The Houston basketball program was dormant, and he took this job, and he had a vision of what he wanted to do. And I'm not saying it was easy, because it wasn't. He's in his 11th year. But the sustained excellence that we have now seen from the Cougars, it blows you away. They are every year a factor. And while they haven't necessarily had a superstar, they've had good players, they've had NBA players, but they haven't had the one go-to superstar that you say, well, that was it. That's when it all started. No, he continues to recruit a certain kind of player, and he's all about development. He said, we had a chance to talk with him yesterday in preparation for the Final Four. He said, I'll go to high school basketball games, and I'll tell you who I think the captain of our team is going to be. I can see it. I can see the attributes. I could see it during their high school junior or senior year. I just know what they're about, and I know it's going to fit with what we do. Their defense is superb. It's number 1 in the country. I don't think that you can go to Houston without knowing that you're going to have to commit on that end of the floor. That's the backbone of everything that they do. The difference this year is that they shoot it really well, and offensively they can compete. There have been previous years where if a team found a little something against them, against Houston's defense, they just couldn't keep up. They couldn't go punch for punch. This year they can. They have 3 players shooting above 40% from three-point territory. Milos Uzan has been a great fit. It didn't happen right away. It took some time, and they've embraced him as their point guard and their on-court leader. LJ Cryer has become a better shooter, and this is a guy that won a national championship for Baylor. And Emmanuel Sharp is exactly that, a sharp shooter. They've got bigs. Tugler just won Defensive Player of the Year, the Lefty Drizel Award. Jawan Roberts is a 6th-year guy. He knows everything about Kelvin Sampson and what he expects from his players. They have a tight rotation. They are experienced. They've been through it before. And if I were Duke, this is not the team that I would want to play in the Final Four. Eventually, you would have to see them if they are what we think they are. But I think they have the kind of formula that could give Duke some serious issues. Duke's been the best team. If we're just talking eye test, they've been the best team in this tournament. They've looked like the best team in this tournament. They have the most weapons of any team in this tournament. They have great role players, transfers that came from other schools that were not the best players on their respective teams, but John Shire and his staff recognized that they needed those kind of guys to surround Cooper Flagg and Con Knipple and Malawach. Sion James came from Tulane, was not the best player there. Malik Brown came from Syracuse, was not the best player there. Mason Gillis came from Purdue, was not the best player there. But they all have filled an important and necessary role, and I think that's why they've been such a complete team this year and why they right now are the prohibitive favorite to win the whole thing.
It's Ian Eagle, the voice of the Final Four, the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. Speaking of Duke, is this the first Duke team since 1986 that has not been, by the college basketball world, other than Duke fans, hated? Because 86 were Union Arena, and it was that's when you had Dawkins and Amaker and Henderson and Allery and Billis, and that was a fun-loving team. And then once they recruited, I'm assuming it started with Leitner because he was a class of high school of 1988. Once he got there, they started to become the foremost hated team in college basketball and remain such. This seems like the first team in a long time that they haven't been that.
Yeah, that's a tremendous observation. You're right. I don't know if there's been a shift or if things have changed within the basketball landscape, that people have moved on from whatever hatred they carried over from the Leitner, Bobby Hurley teams that we saw with J.J. Redick and on and on and on. I don't sense the hatred that we have seen prior. Now, look, I was with them in Raleigh. They were very much beloved down there. And that was weird in and of itself because it was NC State's arena. There was no red. It was all Duke blue. And they were celebrated for how they played in the first and second round. I think that you get to a Final Four, it's a little bit of a different mix. The crowd is a bit different. You have representatives from all four schools, so you will have some old school college basketball fans that may carry some of the vitriol that they once had for the program. And then, let's face it, you have some of the corporate part that, is just there for the party. So I don't know if it's going to be tangible or not in San Antonio, but you're right. It doesn't feel the same as it has in past years. That hateration that we've seen for so long in regards to Duke has not been as pronounced.
All right, in Florida, it's interesting because you have Elijah Martin, who 2 years ago you and I were talking about because my friend Dusty May was the head coach of Florida Atlantic, and he was a part of the Final Four. With that particular team, he has now moved on to Florida, and that's a story certainly, but I do dig all the way around Walter Clayton Jr. and that story from start and how they're trying to write a finishing note with that career for him, because the whole story is incredible to me.
It is. This is a guy that was recruited for football, was getting better offers for football than he was for basketball coming out of high school as a safety, and decided, hey, I don't love football the way that I love basketball. I'm going to take the scholarship offer to Iona, go play for Rick Pitino, and flourish, which he did. And he ends up transferring to Florida. Initially, he's a two-guard. He's a shooter. He's 6'3", 195. That's pretty much where he slotted in. But based on personnel, Todd Golden and the coaching staff make the decision, hey, Walter, we need you to play point guard. We need you to be the lead guard. And I think it's turned out to be the best thing to ever happen in his career. He's still clutch. He still takes and makes big threes. But now he has shown that he can run a team and he can handle the responsibility, and that's why pro scouts are paying attention, that this guy has something. He has that it factor. He moves well without the ball. He doesn't need a whole lot of space and room to get his shot off. He does come through when it matters most. Just look back at that Texas Tech game. I'm not sure they had any right to win the game. What they did at the end of that game was pretty remarkable. With 3:14 left, they're down 9. And the way the game was played, it felt like an even bigger number. They just never got it rolling, and they couldn't stop Texas Tech on the inside. They were really physical, and I think they were having trouble with them. And what happens? First of all, they start making shots, the combination of Clayton and Houck. And then second, Todd Golden goes into the analytics area and starts fouling, and it's 1-and-1s. They miss the front end on 2 possessions, so 2 empty trips. They get back-to-back buckets, and the whole momentum of the game swung. They go on an 18-4 run to end it. I did the game that they played against UConn that easily could have gone sideways on them, but they came through in that game as well. A couple of big defensive plays and then big shot after big shot after big shot, executing at a high level. So I think they feel very battle-tested right now, that they have gone right to the edge on a couple of occasions in this tournament, and they have emerged in both cases. And it's a confident team. They're fun, a lot of fun to watch. I think it's going to be a fantastic game. As we mentioned, they know each other very well, so nobody's going to pull the wool over anyone's eyes.
That's Ian Eagle, who's the voice of the Final Four, CBS, TBS, True TV, of course, the Turner stations also involved. Coming up Saturday and on Monday, national semifinal Saturday, championship game from San Antonio coming up on Monday. Now, I do quickly want to ask you about, as we near the postseason, stretch run of the regular season, are we going to see you here in Indy, you think, with maybe a Pacer playoff game at some point?
Man, I hope so. I love doing playoff games there, the intensity, the passion. I would love to get that assignment. No idea how it's going to play out. I do think we're doing a play-in game, Grant Hill and I, but even that is yet to be determined, whether it's going to be a 7-8 or the loser of that game taking on the winner of the 9-10. So we still have a lot of intrigue in the NBA, how this is all going to play out standings-wise, and then the matchups, which will be such a huge key in both conferences. We know Cleveland's really good. We know Boston's the defending champions. And I think after that, we don't really know which of these teams will be a legitimate threat. The way the Knicks have played at times during the season, you've seen makings of it. They need to get healthy, as we know. The way Indiana has played at times during the season, we've seen some crushing defeats that they've dealt with. It just feels like this year in particular, it just had a few of those where you think, man, how did that happen?
Yeah, a week ago with LeBron James and the Lakers comes to mind. Yeah,
maybe that one probably is front of mind. But that can also harden you. You know, I'm curious. I'm curious how Tyrese Halliburton does in the postseason. It's been an interesting year for him. The slow start, then getting back to his ways and looking like the Olympian and the All-Star. The admiration I have for Rick Carlisle. I just think he's a basketball genius. So to answer your question in the most circuitous way, yes, I hope so. I hope I get a chance to call some Pacer playoff games.
OKC, head and shoulders above everybody else as we approach the playoff season here?
I think so, but as we know, it doesn't take much to change the narrative in the NBA playoffs. One injury, one bad loss, your confidence chipped away because the way that you were winning during the regular season doesn't translate to the postseason. I think they're stacked. I just love their team. I love the way they play. Mark Daigneault is outstanding. He has a terrific feel for his team, what makes them tick. I think he's ushered in this new era of Thunder basketball with young players in a perfect manner, empowering them, and also reading the tea leaves, knowing when they need something maybe a little different to get them motivated. But it's a self-motivated team. They saw the stepping stones happen, and now we're on the other side of it where the expectations are high and legitimate. Last year, they surprised everybody. This year, they've surprised nobody, but they're better. And I think they're better equipped. They use their roster better. Their depth is outstanding. They added key pieces. The players that were already good have become really good. So all-star potential has been fulfilled in certain cases. Yes, top to bottom, you're asking me who's the best team in the NBA. I think they're the best team in the NBA.
What's interesting about it, I can make the comparison to how the NFL formula of a top-notch team needs to be. You draft your quarterback, and you can add around that young quarterback and want to win early before the quarterback gets paid. And really, that's what you have to do right now in OKC before some of these other guys need to get paid and they have to move on. However, they've been put together so well, they're going to have options even beyond that, and all the stuff that they were made fun for of having all these picks and collecting all that over the years, now, as it turns out, looks to be genius.
Yeah, I think the other part about it, though, JMV, you can accumulate all of these assets. You can build the coffers. You still got to hit on your picks.
Right.
And you have to be shrewd in the deals that you make. When they made the Paul George deal, I'm not sure the Clippers deep down really wanted to make that deal. It was Kawhi who wanted Paul George there, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander ends up being a part of it. At that point, you could see that Shai was a really good player, was going to be an impact player. I don't know if anyone would have predicted it at that point that he was going to be a legitimate MVP candidate, but OKC saw something, and they also recognized that Paul George didn't want to be there anymore, and they needed to get the most bang for their buck, and they did. And you got to be lucky and fortunate sometimes too, and hitting on guys like they have. Jalen Williams, anybody could have had him. This was not a top 4 pick. This was someone that they scouted, that they believed in, that they saw something in, and he's developed into an all-star. Chet Holmgren, most teams would have taken him as high as OKC did. He gets injured. He misses an entire year. That could throw off your plan. But they maintained the plan, and then they've added really key pieces. Isaiah Hartenstein was the perfect guy for them. Did they pay him more than anybody else would have paid him? Yes. Yes, the Knicks wanted to keep him, but they paid. They had the money. They had the flexibility. They've been really smart. Sam Presti, I'm not sure you could do a more masterful job than he has done in that rebuild.
Safe travels to San Antonio. We're going to be watching with you and your colleagues coming up on Saturday and Monday, but it's always a pleasure, and here's hoping you get a Pacer game or two. We could see you here.
Yeah, I hope so, JMV. Always great talking to you. It should be a fun weekend. Ready to get the madness going again. Recharge the battery and let's dance.
Have a blast. I appreciate you.
See you, man.
You got it. Ian Eagle, the voice of the Final Four on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. Again, 2 games on Saturday, a game, national title game on Monday. CBS on Saturday, TBS, True TV, probably TNT as well, coming up on Monday. All right, quickly, Miles Turner in tonight. Benedict Mathurin out tonight. At home, the Pacers versus Charlotte. Quote, I don't expect Benedict Mathurin to be out much longer. End quote. Rick Carlisle. And he says, he goes on to say, this is from Tony East, by the way. Carlisle believes he will be back by Sunday, possibly Friday. Regarding Benedict Mathurin. No Mathurin tonight. Miles Turner back in. Pacers and the Hornets at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. That tip time at 7. Coverage begins here at 6:30. So, James, we have a backup number. Is this true?
That is true. We have a backup phone number for people to
Should
use
I hand
today.
this out? Can I give this out right now?
Yeah, go right ahead.
So we've got a little, we're changing over numbers here. So we have a little bit of FUBAR. And the fantastic engineers, the team we have here, have given us a number for you to call in. Now, is it going to light up multiple lines or just one?
I mean, it will work. It will work just like the normal number does.
All right.
It'll be one line.
This is not for right now, but we can take your calls. Are you guys ready? 317-972-3005. 317-972-3005. Let's see if that works for anybody. You're not going to win anything right now. We will put you on the air if you want to talk up something. We'll give you a chance to win stuff, but we want to see if it works right now. I.e., I want to see if anybody is listening to this show. 317-972-3005. Utilize that. We'll talk at you. Utilize that for your chance to win a little bit later on some tickets to a show this summer at Everwise Amphitheater downtown. Tomorrow's location, I'll explain that. Me and you, if that number, it looks like that number works. My God, how many lines do we have available here?
Before we only had 5 or 6. Now it looks like all 8 of them are working.
This is like 8. You guys just cranked on all 8 lines right there. That's why I love you. That's why I love you. Quick break. Back with you, me, your chance to win, and I guess we can now do some Anything Goes after 6 o'clock tonight as well. That number again, and what has been a busy day so far today. Back with you next.
Sis boom bar. Describe the sound made when a sheep explodes.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
You know how awesome that it is that Ian Eagle comes on all the time? You know how good he is as a guest? Podcast, if you missed any of it, with the voice of the Final Four, Ian Eagle. 1075thefan.com. Just awesome. Russell Turner, the head coach of UC Irvine, his story about taking his team once they got into town to St. Elmo's is as good as it gets. And I've got to get a shout out to everybody at that location downtown of St. Elmo's earlier this week that gave that team upon their exit a standing ovation. That's awesome. And you could tell when he was explaining, he got a little bit emotional. UC Irvine and Chattanooga tomorrow night, 9 o'clock, and he could not talk enough about how, and that's our friends from Butler and everybody over there, how they handle. I saw it up close and personal a year ago with Indiana State there, how they handle the NIT at Hinkle, just top-notch. UC Irvine, Chattanooga, NIT final, 9 o'clock tomorrow night. Russell Turner was awesome, the head coach of the Anteaters. Kevin Bowen a little bit earlier. Pat Boylan, the voice of the Fever. And, of course, Pacer pregame coverage at 6:30 tonight. Pacers and Charlotte. Miles Turner back. Benedict Mathurin still out, but Mathurin maybe Friday, maybe Sunday. All right, quick weather update before I get to your calls. A little anything goes coming up after the top of the hour, too. A tornado watch is in effect until 11 o'clock tonight. This is for the western half of Indiana. However, it does include Indy. This is according to Sean Ash of Channel 13 WTHR. Stormline reaches Illinois-Indiana border at about 6, maybe 7 o'clock. The Indy Metro, 8 until 9. Tornadic cells possible in advance of the line. And I'd mention it's mostly western Indiana, but here's where it is for our area. It is Hamilton County, Boone, Hendricks, Morgan, Johnson. That includes Marion. I'm just going by eyeball right here. Monroe, Owen, Putnam, Montgomery, of course, GC. G-Mama down there is under a tornado watch right now until 11 o'clock, too. And I'm sure I'm going to get a call, much like I did a couple of nights ago. Hey, this is your mom. Don't worry about me, with no basement and surrounded by glass. Hey, this is me, your mom. Lawrence County involved in this, too. I believe to the north, where are we going here? I think Grant County is involved, Clinton County. Until 11 o'clock tonight, that is a tornado watch. And if anything transpires before we bail, we'll absolutely tell you all about it, as much as we can. All right, 239-1070. Check that. It's no longer the number. We got a new number. You guys ready? Sorry about that. Old habits. 317-972-3005 is the number. I mentioned a little bit earlier, too, James Johnson nominated for Teammate of the Year, the Regulator. This is what his head coach, Rick Carlisle, says about the Regulator. Quote, he works very hard at the relationships he has with guys in the locker room, end quote. He's a guy that's highly respected league-wide. Also known as a badass. Seriously, he's just a badass. The Regulator, James Johnson. Love that. Teammate of the Year. Nominee. All right, calls right now. Brownsburg Will is going to lead on line 4. We got like 8 lines right here. It's like a buffet of lines for you to call in. Hello, Brownsburg Will.
What's up, my man? How are you? Cromwell. Lincoln Quad.
Yeah, you know what? It's funny. I never stayed. I visited, but I was on 606 South 5th. I was at 6th and Deming, and I was at 8th and Crawford. That is where, in the final year, everything took place to the tune of, this is a true story. You ready, Will? That the then basketball coach, Tate's Locke, issued a statement to his team in the locker room. Nobody was allowed to go to my parties. And this has been confirmed because they got too wild and they got into trouble. So, nobody was allowed at 8th and Crawford.
Was that before Marcus Johnson was doing the kickstand, breakdance, spinning on his back?
It was. He did the most famous keg stand in the history of Indiana State University. Now, this was after. This was 606 South 5th, and that's when our good friend LaSalle Thompson, we know very well, and Marcus Johnson from Pike. Marcus did at 6'9", 6'10", the most famous keg stand in the history of Indiana State University. It was magnificent.
Epic.
It really was.
It was epic. Well, my friend, I just called to tell you you're doing a great job. My daughter and I are headed down to go see the blue and gold.
Yes.
I just wanted to make sure that new number worked.
Yeah.
You sound like you was in the club. Give me some
I know.
Number.
It was weird because it was funny. One of the engineers said to me yesterday, we were up in B1057, and he goes, "Man, how do you keep all these track of all these numbers?" And sometimes I have to print them out in like bold type to remind myself that I don't want to give the fan number on B or vice versa right there. And now I have to add a new number to the equation. So it's kind of like that scene. It's like that scene with Zach Galifianakis in The Hangover where he's got all those formulas in his head. That's what I am like right now with numbers.
That sounds great. Well, keep up the good work, my friend.
Brownsburg Will and his daughter enjoy the game later on tonight, checking out Charlotte and the Pacers down at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. Seriously, Marcus Johnson, one of the more epic keg stands in the history of keg stands. 6'9". We needed somebody on a ladder to get to his feet. I believe, and I don't think these guys got in trouble. I believe, and this is a true story right here, James. It's a true party story. Tales of me throwing parties at Indiana State. 606 South 5th. Back when they used to do local news and didn't screw over their viewing public like they do now at WTHI Channel 10, when they were truly local and cared about those in the Wabash Valley. Back when they did that, this was 1991, the fall of 91. I threw a tremendous party, and they were doing stories on college parties and interviewed like 5 or 6 people in the backyard because the party had spilled out to the backyard. I have this genius idea. I said, you know what? Let's go ahead. I had these huge speakers, and I moved these huge speakers out, and I just cranked up Belle Biv DeVoe as loud as I could, and it went down the block. Unfortunately, it also called the cops. And here's my idea. So the cops are coming. I moved everybody into the house, turned off all the lights, and locked the doors. Quiet.
And what time of the evening was this?
This was probably 1 o'clock in the morning. So I will say this. Local Popo decided to go to the house next door and then busted everybody there.
Oh, were they also having a party right next door?
No, our party spilled over into their house.
Gotcha.
And that group, I believe his name, I think he was on an episode of Shipmates, if you remember that show, the dating show Shipmates in the 2000s. I believe my man Mike Keeler and company got busted.
Bit of collateral damage right there.
Yeah. And then I went outside to talk to the cops, and they go, you know what? We've had this routine played on us before, so we're going to let you go this time. And they went next door and busted them. I feel bad about that to this day. Now, I got it at some point further down the road, but at that moment, I did sidestep a good busting right there. So that's good. All right, quick break. We'll come back. It's Brownsburg Will with the references of Indiana State's awesome. All right, want to do tickets coming up maybe on the other side here too? I'll give you that new number. Is this just for today or is this ongoing here?
I am not sure. What I was told is that it is a temporary number, but I don't know how long temporary is.
I have a temporary number to give. We'll do that. We have calls. We've got Anything Goes after 6 and tickets for a fantastic show coming up this summer. We'll give you a chance to win coming up on the other side. 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
No. The definition of the word idiot, which you f***ing are.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
All right, August the 11th. Everwise Amphitheater, White River State Park. An awesome facility. Great venue to watch a show. The last time I was there, Clayton Anderson was playing, and I was hanging out backstage with HUD. Me and HUD Mellencamp. Me and HUD. HUD thought he could take shots of whiskey me. And come on now. Come on, HUD. Flaming Lips and Modest Mouse on August the 11th. Number 9, 317-972-3005. That is our temporary number because the other one, the normal one, is FUBAR. 317-972-3005. The Flaming Lips and Modest Mouse together, August the 11th on a Monday, Everwise Amphitheater, White River State Park. Yeah, that number, 317-972-3005. News of the day, Cam Heide, Boilermakers into the transfer portal. IU reeled in its first. Connor Enright, if you recognize that name, a year ago, played for Chris Holtman at DePaul. 2 years ago, he might as well have just come over and kicked me square in the sack. There I was, along with Blake, my good friend Jeff Watson, and Big Ed at that crap house known as Enterprise Center in St. Louis. Arch Madness championship game, Sunday afternoon. Sycamores and Drake tied at 76. I'm going crazy on the sideline. I'm in my powder blues. You can actually see me here, I think. If this were to continue, you could actually see me. But he knocks down a 3. Tied at 76, second half, 2-minute mark that you can't view as the difference. So between he and now, once again, his head coach, Darren DeVries, just kicked me right square in the sack. Then, of course, they go on to win it. Yeah, that was tough. They go on to, now again, it was, as we talked a little bit earlier with Russell Turner, the head coach of UC Irvine, who's in the NIT final. You know, Indiana State goes to the NIT final and then, unfortunately, gags away a late lead and loses that to Seton Hall last year. Great memories. Connor Enright is the guard right there, in case you're wondering. All right, quick break. We'll come back. If you're on hold, I'll get to you. Again, that number, 317-972-3005. 8 minutes of anything goes. Who's up for it right now? 317-972-3005. We have 8 minutes of anything goes coming up. Pacers, Hornets tonight. Miles in, Matherin out. Pat Boylan, Mark Boyle, Eddie Gill have you coming up at the bottom of the hour. That tip time tonight from the field house is at 7 o'clock. Inbound, severe weather. We'll get you any updates if they come in before we bail as well. And a Colts Daily update also coming at you. That's after 6 o'clock. 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
With JMV.
Now you listen here. He's not the Messiah. He's a very naughty boy. Now go away.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
On this severe weather on the inbound Wednesday, stay weather aware. We have about 8 minutes of Anything Goes. It's James over there. I'm John. The number. It's temporary, but dial it 317-972-3005. 317-972-3005. We have normally 5. We have 8 lit right now. And I mean lit in like a JMV in the 1990s lit way. Right there. Lit with a capital L. 8. I had no idea all 8 of those worked until we put that number out there and you guys lighting it up. So 317-972-3005 for Anything Goes right here. We'll lead you up to the Colts Daily Update and then the Pacer pregame. Hornets, Pacers, bottom of the hour. Matherin remains out. Rick Carlisle mentioned earlier today he should be good either Friday or Sunday. And Miles Turner back later on tonight. And as I mentioned too, Charlotte has been a tremendous pain in the ass trying to go for the sweep against the Pacers. They are a bad team that has little interest in winning, but has been a master for whatever reason against the Pacers. Russell Turner, the head coach of UC Irvine, final of the NIT coming up tomorrow night, 9 o'clock, Hinkle Fieldhouse, Chattanooga and UC Irvine. I thought Russell Turner was really good earlier. Podcast 1075thefan.com. If you missed a story about he and his team at St. Elmo's and the round of applause upon their exit, you want to hear it. Awesome. He sounded very emotional. Ian Eagle, voice of the Final Four a little bit earlier as well. Kevin Bowen and Pat Boylan all on the show today. Podcast 1075thefan.com. Cam Heide, Purdue, into the transfer portal. Connor Enright, former Drake, former DePaul guard to IU. Tucker DeVries, the son of Darren DeVries, the new head coach down in Bloomington of the Hoosiers, has committed as expected to IU earlier today as well. All right, meantime, 317-972-3005. And Bill is on the lead here during Anything Goes. Hello, Bill. How are you?
Good, JMV. How are you?
Fantastic. Great to see you last week, Bill. Are you going to make it to Coach's Tavern once again to join the show tomorrow?
As long as they've got cold beer, I'll be there.
Cold beer will be, plus we're going to be drinking. We got the Heaven Hill Distillery, the cocktailage, and all that.
Sounds like a plan. Hey, I was calling to see if there's any update on the cruise.
Update? There is no update. I will provide updates as we go a little bit further down the road, but no update as of right now, Billy.
Marvelous. I'm down here at the Steak and Shake at 31 in Smith Valley. If you don't get swept away with the tornado down here, stop by.
Hold on one second.
Kids.
So 31 and Smith Valley, so you're over there around Greenwood High School, correct?
Correct.
Steak and Shake, near Greenwood High School, 31 in Smith Valley. Go in. Can I direct people to go in and ask for Bill?
Absolutely.
That's all. Go in and ask for Bill at that Steak and Shake location. Again, 31 in Smith Valley in Greenwood, and thank me later. Ask for Bill. Bill, I appreciate you.
See you tomorrow.
It's Bill Cash right there. Good friend of the show. Good location. He is the world's most knowledgeable Boilermaker fan and longtime friend of this show during Anything Goes. It's Garen. Garen, welcome in. How are you?
What's up, JMV? What's going on with the phones? Is it like an alien number you guys got to use now?
It's weird, isn't it? Yeah, we've had FUBAR with the other one, the normal one. So temporarily we go with 317-972-3005, and you are in. Garen, go ahead.
There you go. So I guess just the initial take going into the portal season was that I figured there'd be 3 transfers, the 2 obvious, Waddell and Berg. And I figured, law of averages, only one of the athletic wings would return. And after the way the last few weeks of the season was, you had to think that guy was probably Heidi. So that, to me, came as a surprise overall. Is just that, but in the end, if the most important thing is starting in minutes, he was not going to have that opportunity at Purdue next year. He was very unlikely to start. Colvin was very unlikely to start without them learning how to create their own shot or dribble to the hole. And so while in its current state right now, I would say Purdue has, a little bit more precarious of a situation, not having an over-the-rim, crazy athlete like that so many other teams they face in the tournament will. I still think that they're in a net better position with the signing of Clough yesterday. And just like I had said all season long, I expected Painter to go after some type of athletic slasher to the basket guy, a.k.a. think of Lance Jones in reincarnate, but something like that as he puts all the chips on the table and makes us about winning the national title next year. And for that last part, we'll just have to wait to see what happens.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I kind of wonder if you don't see Cam Heidi go back to his home state, Minnesota, where Nico Medved is from Colorado State, the new head coach with the Golden Gophers, and he's the one that, if you remember, brought in Ethan Morton to Fort Collins with the Rams a year ago. So you kind of wonder if maybe that's the end result of that. Plus, I think they're probably had, some of their frontline players, in this case, those three probably got a bit of a raise, did they not, from the NIL?
Oh, absolutely, and that's just part of the situation right now. The nostalgic sports fan in you, the guy that loves seeing legacies at Purdue, especially something like the Colvin family. I'm a Joe Tiller alkalite. I loved watching Rosie live in person as a student. It's a bummer, but it's just the reality of the situation. And as long as the big three are back, with the signing of Clough, with the just oozing potential of Jacobson, you have to really, really like next year. And now the thing is, just hope to see him add some athleticism. But it's also part of this for the top programs. We're looking at this from the vacuum of being a Purdue fan or an analyst at Purdue situation. This is happening literally everywhere.
It is.
UConn, under the second championship under Hurley, that's the only one I can think of where he took a great team, added two more just perfect pieces like Cam Spencer, and I forget the other lengthy transfer. And what they made, they eventually made a super team. It was one of the best teams that have been built in the NCAA in the last 20 years. Yeah. That was the perfect situation. Other than that UConn situation, everyone else will be in the same bucket as Purdue.
Yep.
And I think they'll be okay.
Yep. Hey, Garen, thank you for the call, man. We appreciate that. Everybody be weather aware tonight. Enjoy the Hornets and the Pacers right here, bottom of the hour, following the Colts Daily Update, which is next. Ian Eagle, Russell Turner, Kevin Bowen, Pat Boylan Podcast, 1075thefan.com. Coach's Tavern downtown coming up tomorrow. I cannot wait to see you all there, beginning at 3.